The U.S. decided to abstain yesterday in the UN and allow sort of a ceasefire resolution to go through. Previously, the U.S. has vetoed 3 different ceasefire resolutions. So the fact that we abstained and allowed this through did appear to be a shift in terms of our policy and what we are willing to do, at least through diplomatic channels, in order to try to pressure Israel to come to some sort of a deal and end their outrageous assault on the Gaza Strip. Let's go ahead and we can show you as this vote went down. Put this up on the screen.
The result of the voting is as follows. 14 votes in favor, 0 vote against, 1 abstention. The draft resolution has been adopted as Resolution 2728, 2024.
So that's the actual vote going down. And immediately there were a few questions. Number 1, how is Israel going to react? And number 2, is this just another version of PR messaging shift from the U.S., or is this going to be backed up by some actual policy changes? We now can answer both of those questions. So let's start with Israel's response. They freaked out, put this up on the screen, threw an absolute tantrum. Bibi Netanyahu canceled the meetings of this delegation that was supposed to come here and meet with Biden officials. Specifically, they were supposed to be meeting about alternative plans with regard to Rafah and the looming invasion there. I'll read you a little bit from this piece. So they say, minutes before the vote, Netanyahu claimed the resolution did not condition the ceasefire call on the release of hostages and threatened to cancel the Rafah meetings if the U.S. didn't use its veto. That's really not even accurate. I mean, the resolution does, in fact, call for the release of hostages, but that was the way he wanted to spin it. After the U.S. abstained, UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield offered assurances the resolution meant the ceasefire must come as part of a hostage deal. This explanation apparently did not reassure Netanyahu, who swiftly announced the cancellation of that delegation. We also have some reporting, I'll bring you a little bit, that U.S. officials were apparently perplexed and confused by this and feel like he is just using this moment for his own domestic political benefit. So put a pin in that, more on that later. But let's talk a little bit also about the U.S. response. Did this actually represent some sort of a shift? Is this going to come, this Security Council resolution, with some sort of pressure to actually get Israel to stop doing the atrocities and starvation of the Gaza Strip and actually come to some sort of a, what they said in this deal, lasting ceasefire agreement? Well, according to Matt Lee, no, it does not represent a shift in our position. It comes with no pressure. It is effectively, per us, meaningless. Let's take a listen to this exchange.
And so what do you expect now to happen as a result of the passage of this resolution?
So I think—
Do you expect that Israel is going to announce a ceasefire?
I do not.
And that, do you expect that Hamas is going to release hostages?
So I'm glad you mentioned that, because one of the things that we have objected to for some time is that most of the people that call for a ceasefire, we believe, are calling for Israel to unilaterally stop operations and not calling for Hamas to agree to a ceasefire where they would release hostages.
Well, I think it goes both ways, doesn't it?
It could, but wait. But the resolution today is a non-binding resolution. But
okay, so what's the point?
Well,
why did you abstain? Why didn't you veto?
We didn't veto because we thought the language in it was consistent with something that the language as it relates to the ceasefire and release of hostage was consistent with the longstanding United States position.
So you don't believe anything is going to happen as a result of the passage of this resolution?
So I think that separate and apart from this resolution, we have active, ongoing negotiations to try to achieve what this resolution calls for, which is an immediate ceasefire and the release of hostages. I don't know. I can't say that this resolution is going to have any impact on those negotiations. But those negotiations are ongoing. They've been ongoing over the weekend, and they've made progress.
So I don't expect you to answer this now, but to me, you just stick this in your pocket. If that's the case, what the hell is the point of the UN, or the UN Security Council?
So we think it plays an important role.
It does, even though its action does absolutely nothing. And that you're going to get what you would like to see, not out of the UN, but out of discussions in Doha.
So we believe it's important that the UN speak and the UN Security Council speak on matters of international security. It's why we've been engaged in this process. It's why we thought we were going to have a successful vote on Friday that Russia and China, unfortunately and quite cynically vetoed. But I do believe that ultimately, if we are able to achieve a ceasefire and the release of hostages is going to come not through a UN process, but through the process with which we've been engaged, yes, in Doha.
What the hell is even the point of the UN? Let me just say, God bless Matt Lee. This exchange was extraordinary. And let me pick up on one piece in particular, because immediately not only Matt Miller, but Linda Thomas Greenfield and others rushed to the mics to say, oh, well, this resolution is non-binding, so it really doesn't mean anything at all. Our position is the same. It hasn't changed, et cetera, et cetera. This is just making stuff up. UN Security Council resolutions are binding. So they're just inventing new international law to pretend to the world, themselves, Israel, whatever, that this is inconsequential. And because they have taken the position that it is inconsequential and that it literally means nothing, causing Matt Lee to ask, well, what the hell is even the point of the UN? Why did you even frickin' do this? Why should we care? Revealing that it actually does mean nothing in their eyes and is not going to come with any change in policy, any pressure with regard to Israel. And it's just one more example of their BS propaganda, ass-covering moves that really don't come with any sort of substantive policy difference to try to effectuate a different policy direction.
I mean, look, all of this is symbolic, and that's part of why it's so annoying to watch this whole charade play out. The Israelis treat it as if it's a real change in policy. They're not stupid, and they know that's not the case. The same thing happened from 2016 when Barack Obama, at the end of his presidency, allowed a UN resolution to go through, which was critical of the settlement policy. Did anything change in the settlement policy, Krystal? Okay, so what do we learn about that? Second, though, is that the Biden administration is doing their absolute best to get as many headlines as possible to make it appear as if they have rhetorically changed anything, while policy on the ground remains exactly the same. The problem, though, is that in some ways, the Israelis are not wrong in that they have even ground somebody like Biden to the point where even whenever you're going to ship them as many weapons as possible, that they have to try and distance themselves from your actions. And this is where symbolically, I mean, what we've really been warning about from the beginning is, listen, you can do what you want, but you are really suffering in the eyes of the world. And this is just further evidence of that. And that's also why they're pulling out all the stops. We have this, for example, our tried and true friend now in this conflict, the Israeli minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, if we can put it up there, please, on the screen. He says that the Security Council decision proves that the United Nations is anti-Semitic and its Secretary General is anti-Semitic and it encourages Hamas.
Right.
I mean, everything is anti-Semitic and or encouraging to Hamas. But I mean, I just think that the way that we can look at this is that it is both symbolically a problem from Israel, I think, in the long run, but in the short term, there has been, and this is why it was so critical to play that Matt Lee clip, there is no change in official U.S. policy.
Right.
And that is the actual takeaway that our audience needs to hear today.
Yeah, and I have more on that in a moment. Let me show you the Hamas response to this. Let's put this up on the screen. So in a surprising statement, this person opines Hamas welcomed the UNSC's decision, called for its immediate implementation. Hamas also affirmed their readiness to engage in a prisoner exchange process leading to the release of detainees held by both sides. So that was their reaction to this. And put the next one up on the screen. Just more to the point about Israel's reaction here. So a bunch of U.S. officials leaked to Axios' Barak Ravid that they think Bibi is intentionally provoking a crisis for his own domestic benefit. A U.S. official said the White House was perplexed by what it sees as an overreaction by Netanyahu, because in their mind, they're like, we haven't changed our policy.
Right.
This is all just some bullshit PR stunt. So why are you freaking out? Like, we're not cutting off weapons. We're not doing anything different. So why are you freaking out? The official said the White House is puzzled. The prime minister rejected the U.S. interpretation of the UN resolution, decided to air his differences with the Biden administration in public and tell the U.S. what its policy is when the U.S. is already stating its policy, which is different from what Netanyahu is saying. Quote, all of that is self-defeating. The prime minister could have chosen a different course to align with the U.S. on the meaning of this resolution. He chose not to, apparently for political purposes. So they're saying here basically that the freakout is for show, for domestic Israeli political consumption. that it looks good for him to seem to be, standing up to the U.S. and being angry about the UN Security Council resolution, even as these officials went out of their way to assure him that literally nothing is actually changing. So to your point about it being theater, this is proof positive of exactly that.
And to really hit this home, I want especially, again, what's actually happening, let's put this please up on the screen, is that the U.S. at the exact same time actually found within the State Department that Israel is in compliance with the Biden demand of international law and humanitarian aid. The State Department has said, quote, "We have not found Israel to be in violation either when it comes to the conduct of the war or the provision of humanitarian assistance." This was made, Krystal, they had up until May 8th to provide Congress with that report on its compliance after the demand was currently happening. And the key point of saying that they have not found it is that that then allows them to continue the weapon shipments and to continue to fulfill the weapons wish lists that are currently here. So be very careful about just accepting, whatever is supposedly a change in policy at the United Nations. At the brass tacks level, in terms of weapons that will continue to flow, the U.S. State Department certifies that these weapons are being used in the international laws of war and that humanitarian aid is being allowed into the Gaza Strip.
I expected this, and it still was absolutely enraging to me, because you literally had last week Secretary of State Tony Blinken saying that 100% of the population is facing acute food deficiencies, okay? He said this is the first time we've ever seen an entire population suffer from this level of food deprivation. And then not even a week later, you and the State Department turn around and certify, oh, there's no problem with humanitarian aid. No, they're not blocking. Do you think we're stupid? Do you think we can't see the images coming out? The absolute desperation as people clamor for anything they can get their hands on, eating weeds, drinking water that is unsafe, unsanitary, making them sick, making at best using feed that is meant for animals to try to put together, something that they could possibly sustain themselves on. The entire population, you said 100%. You've never seen this before. And yet you're going to certify that, oh, no, they're not blocking humanitarian aid. This certification came on the very same day that the UN released a report saying, yes, it does look like genocide, based on Israel's actions, based on not just the number of people that have been killed, but the total annihilation of civilian life, based on, hey, we just saw, not just in Gaza, but we saw the largest land grab in the West Bank that we've seen in 30 years, as we covered yesterday. And with all of this going on, you're going to certify, no, they're following international law. Bullshit. We just saw the drone footage of them targeting unarmed civilians who were just walking by in Khan Yunis. And they hit them, and when they're crawling and scrambling for their lives, going back in and hitting them again with zero justification. And you're going to certify, no, we think it's all fine. They're abiding by international law. Your own base, 50% majority, think that this is a genocide. We have polling that we'll show you in a moment about the way that your own voters view this conflict and how much the U.S. public, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, how wary they are of providing additional military assistance to Israel at this moment. And you're going to go against all of that. You're going to go against what a number of Senate Democrats have said, including Chris Van Hollen, who's no freaking radical. You're going to go against that. You're going to go against what every human rights organization, including a number of Israeli human rights organizations, have said about what's unfolding on the ground. You're going to go against your own words a week ago where you were talking about how the whole population is being starved to death. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And so if there was any inkling of hope that perhaps this abstention, remember they didn't even vote for it, but they allowed the resolution to pass through Security Council, that this represented some sort of shift in terms of this administration's support for an ongoing genocide in the Gaza Strip. If you had any inkling of hope that that was the case, this is your answer. Definitively, conclusively, they have not shifted or budged one single inch. They've changed their messaging for their own domestic political consumption, and it is all a game. and it is all theater to them. Bibi is playing off of it, doing what he needs to do to try to stay in power, and Biden is changing his messaging and his rhetoric, thinking that is going to fool all of us into thinking that there has been some actual change in policy, and it is total and complete bullshit. Matt Miller got asked about this yesterday, whether they still think that UNRWA should be defunded, and asked about whether Israel is blocking humanitarian aid. Let's take a listen to how he responded.
Do you still believe, or is it still the U.S. assessment that Israel is not using food or assistance as a tool of war?
So we have not made an assessment or drawn the conclusion that they are in violation of international humanitarian law when it comes to the provision of humanitarian assistance into Gaza.
We have not made an assessment. I mean, Saagar, what do you make of that language that's such a non-answer here? Because they really can't come out and say, no, they're not blocking aid, because it's so manifestly obvious to anyone who's paying attention. So they just say, well, we haven't made that assessment.
Yeah, I mean, they're just living in their own house of cards now at this point, because they've constructed their entire policy such that they're trying to have the language of humanitarianism in compliance with international law, in compliance with U.S. law, frankly, and then also to try and assuage some of the concerns of what is just patently obvious to any even neutral observer now at this point. So I just see it as really collapsing within its own tortured logic, which frankly, that's really been the case now for the Biden administration for quite some time. And I echo what you said. God bless Matt Lee and all the other State Department reporters, our own Ryan Grimm as well, who have been pressing these people. He got in some great questions yesterday, too. It all collapses, on its with the most basic level of scrutiny, and that's really what we're seeing with this guy. Even his MSNBC training is not coming out all that useful for him in this time.
I think about these people. Matt Miller, Karine Jean-Pierre. I knew her. We were at MSNBC together. She comes out of this lefty, anti-war activist background, and I'm just like, how did you justify this to yourself?
Because Trump is bad, and they work for Biden, and Biden is not Trump. I genuinely think that's it. Yeah.
Was there a moment, was there a decision point where it was like, I can either advance my career or I can hold to some sort of principle here, and the career path was chosen, and then you find yourself in front of a podium justifying a genocide? Does it happen little by little? Is there one sort of seminal moment that sends you inexorably in that direction? I think about that because it's crazy to me. I'm sure Matt Miller, I don't really know him, but I know him from, his MSNBC days and whatever. I'm sure he saw himself as this moral, liberal, progressive type. And now look at you standing up there and saying, oh, well, we haven't assessed whether or not they're blocking humanitarian aid, justifying carrying water for all of this. We don't even know how. The number is about 30,000 people. We really don't know. We don't know. We don't know how many people are buried under the rubble. We don't know what this is going to do to every single child in the Gaza Strip for the rest of their lives. Entire thing destroyed, and you're still standing there carrying water, doing whatever you need to do for that day's propaganda agenda. It's utterly disgusting, and these people are complete and utter monsters. Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.